Senator Anderson, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Imprisoning an innocent person is an affront to the very concept of justice. When the system fails the accused, the victims, and both their families, the state should restore that individual as quickly and as completely as possible for the years of life stolen from them. Senate Bill 1094 would require the California Victims Compensation Board, 1, to calculate compensation within 30 days of the presentation of a valid claim, and 2, without further litigation, present that claim to the legislature for payment. With me here today is Alex Simpson from the California Innocence Project and North California Innocence Project exoneree, Obie Anthony.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, and thank you to this committee. This SB 1094 is something that is very simple to understand. Nobody wants to have wrongfully convicted individuals struggle when they get out of prison after trying to integrate back into society after being imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit. Some people have spent years, sometimes decades, for crimes that they didn't commit, and unfortunately, the Compensation Board is an altogether different hurdle that they have to overcome after they get out. For example, in Obie Anthony's case, I was the attorney on his co-defendant's case. The cases were reversed after a judge had found that the witness in the case who had testified that they had seen Obie and his co-defendant commit the crime was actually one of the people who was the shooter. So after the judge had found that that individual was likely the true perpetrator, he then applied for compensation. The Compensation Board took approximately 5 years to resolve his compensation in his favor. So really what we're talking about is trying to get people back on their feet as quickly as possible with an easy process that can be something that can be automatic. And I'm going to turn the rest of my time over to Obie Anthony. He can talk about his experience as a wrongfully convicted individual and the Compensation Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill, and thank you for hearing me again. As you see this time, I have some paper with me because for the main reasons for the importance of 1049. My case is one of the, took a while for that to transpire. And I wanted to come to testify on a part of this bill based to be an example to show you those things. And so in my case, I am a living proof that even when the current compensation, even with the current compensation system work, it's still broke. It's still broken. I came home in 2011. Came home in 2011, and thanks to through the amendment bill under the Senator Leno, I did receive compensation, thanks to that bill. But it took nearly 5 years, and because it took 5 years to litigate, my civil attorneys took a large percentage of that money. This was after court had already reversed my conviction, and the district attorney had dismissed the charges. The court had found out that I was wrongfully convicted. I was supposed to be presumed innocent after that. Just like everyone, just like every other citizen. But for some reason, the system still makes up, still proves us wrong even more. I went through more hearings and additional appeals and years without money. 2011, when I came home, I had assumed that those things will be resumed quickly when those things happened, but it didn't. And there was a lot of things that transpired in those 5 years. It's time to stop making exonerees go through the things that we go through when we walk out of the door. I agree with your statement earlier that what happens to us when we walk out is preponderous. But each time that I come here, I always say that this is not the last time that you will see me because of the tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. I just testified on AB 1050. And I just left a summit with a gathering of more than like 30 other individuals. Total of 371 years was in the room. It's just not a process. As you see, I suffered, and I've been home for a while, and I'm still suffering, trying to deal with not only the PTSD, but the paranoia that I suffered through, the disconnect from a lot of people in society because I'm not part of it, and I'm not that either. And it's just a complication for us, specifically when we walk out of the door in this state, just allow it to be. And so we beg and ask of you with our stories and with our hearts and minds that this bill is not only passed, but pushed forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony. Other witnesses in support?
Ronnie Carmona. My son was wrongfully convicted when he was 16. He died 7 years later, never having been compensated. There were no resources for us, not even for him to get counseling. So the struggle's real, and it's harsh what we go through. Thank you.
Good morning, Jasmine Harris, California Innocence Project, proud co-sponsor. Good morning, Melissa O'Connell from the Northern California Innocence Project, and we're a proud co-sponsor of this bill.
Zavion Johnson, wrongly incarcerated 16 years, been home 4 months, and I so strongly support this bill.
My name is Darwin Crabtree from Butte County, exonerated 3 months ago, spent 9 years in prison, 17 years having to register as a sex offender, falsely accused, falsely incarcerated, and it took me 10 years, once we had the evidence to prove my innocence, before I could even have standing in court. As of the law that just passed last year, I was able to be exonerated. Without this bill, I have no access to any compensation. Thank you.
Natasha Minsker, ACLU of California, and strong support.
Andrea Perry with Californians for Safety and Justice, and strong support. Thank you to the author for bringing this forward.
John Eldon from Oakland, California, the director of After Innocence, a nonprofit that provides reentry assistance to exonerees, more than 500 of them across the country, including 42 in California. I work one-on-one with these folks. This is a really important bill, but we need to go further. You have a proposal before you sent in as comments that I hope you will take seriously as a possible amendment to, for example, relieve Obie Anthony and others from paying attorney's fees in connection with these applications, to provide compensation for things like time on the parole and sex offender registry that Darwin Crabtree, who you just heard from. This compensation regime has been addressed 9 times in the last 10 years by our legislature. It's time to take a thoroughgoing look and really get this right. And I encourage you to do that, as well as supporting this bill and 1050.
Larry Randall from Courage, Oakland, California, in strong support.
Eric Henderson from the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, strong support.
Emilio Laxapien, Youth Justice Coalition, LA, strongly support.
Allie from the Youth Justice Coalition, and I urge you to please support this bill.
Kim McGill from the Youth Justice Coalition, we're in strong support.
Lupita with the Youth Justice Coalition, I strongly support.
Tina Jackson, Angels for Justice, on behalf of future exoneree Zachary Pettis, and I strongly support this bill.
Zaria Thomas with the Youth Justice Coalition, I strongly support.
Mad with Courage from Oakland, California, and strong support.
Kat Brooks, Anti-Police Terror Project, Justice Teams Network, strongly support.
Brittany Craig, Central Alameda Neighborhood Council and Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, strong support.
Hannah Jerzallen, White People for Black Lives, Los Angeles, I strongly support this bill.
Laura Smith, a member of White People for Black Lives and Democratic Socialists of America, LA, in strong support.
Helen Jones, my son was wrongfully convicted and then murdered by the sheriff deputies in jail, so I strongly support this bill.
Dylan DeBase with the Youth Justice Coalition System, and I highly support this bill.
Teresa Smith, Law Enforcement Accountability Network. I strongly support this bill.
Valerie Rivera from Los Angeles, California, and I strongly support this bill.
Lori Valdez with Justice for Josiah and Silicon Valley Debug, and we strongly support.
James Birch, Anti-Police Terror Project, strongly support.
Edward Youth Justice Coalition, in strong support.
Anton Weston from Youth Justice Coalition, strong support.
Maylin Tomasino from YGC, I strongly support. Kathleen Tomasino with the Youth Justice Coalition, and I strongly support.
Anthony Robles with the Just Coalition and Project Rebound at Cal State Alea University Support Program for Formerly Incarcerated Individuals, and I strongly support this bill.
I'm Jordan with the YJC, strongly support.
Again, my name is Chidozie Easy with the Y. Yeah, I strongly support.
Alice Lynch, People Acting in Community Together, I strongly support.
Jane Wellford, Global Women's Strike Berkeley, strongly support.
Mira Fai, UC Berkeley Institute to the Study of Societal Issues, strongly support.
Rachel West, U.S. Prostitutes Collective, strongly support.
Rosie Chavez, San Jose, California, with Justice for Jacob Dominguez, and I strongly support.
Janice Griffith from Los Angeles, California, strongly support.
Maritza with Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice in Oakland, California, and I strongly support.
Josh Stokes from Courage, Oakland, I strongly support.
Reina Duenas, Justice for Ernest Duenas Jr., and I strongly support.
Cephas Uncle Bobby Johnson, Love Not Blood Campaign, strongly support.
Deion Smith Downs, strongly support Black Lives Matter, Stockton Chapter 209.
Robert Cope, member of ACE and DSA here in Sacramento, strong support.
Christine Gatson-Michaelak, White People for Black Lives, support.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice and support.
Kwasi Nkrumah, Martin Luther King Coalition of Greater Los Angeles. We support this bill.
Dina Bello, Justice for James Nate Greer, I support. Keep your head up.
Good morning. Susan Leff on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association, strong on support.
Hi, Judy Mancuso, Social Compassion and Legislation from Laguna Beach, in support.
Patty Shanker from Los Angeles and Palm Springs. I urge your support. My father was a criminal lawyer, and I stand up in memory of him. Thank you.
Dennis Flynn from Cares for Youth, and I strongly support.
Francesca Wright, speaking for myself as a person with compassion, very strongly support.
Larry Doyle on behalf of the Conference of California Bar Associations in support.
Bill Jackson from Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, I strongly support.
Valentin Zuniga Contreras from Orange County, strongly support.
All right, now we need the witnesses in opposition.
Sean Hoffman with the California District Attorneys Association. We were opposed. We had some concerns with the language as introduced. We understand there have been some amendments and look forward to working with the author to what I think will be resolving our concerns. Thank you.
Okay, so you're a tweener now. All right. I like that word. Any other?
Slow start.
Yeah, any other witnesses in opposition? Okay. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, and thank you, sir, for coming here today and telling us your story. It's always a very disappointing and appalling situation when we learn of people that have been unjustly incarcerated, especially when we've seen in this legislature, sometimes it can exceed decades where people are finally found incidents, and you can't redeem those years that are lost, and you can't redeem those relationships that are lost in the time that people are incarcerated, and people that are unjustly incarcerated need to have some type of a streamlining compensation process, because you just, unfortunately, while we're trying to address rehabilitation and job skills in our prisons and jails, we're not there yet. And people come out of prison or come out of jail without the skills, and we don't want them to recidivate, especially when they're not recidivating because they really didn't do a crime. So there needs to be a mechanism where you need to be compensated in a prompt way. And it's also very disturbing for me to hear that one has to hire an attorney to get compensation, and that attorney takes a third or more of your just compensation, so you could just get back and get your life in order and move on. And so I want to applaud the author for bringing this forward, and I would like to move the bill, and hopefully, sir, through your testimony here today, hopefully we're going to give some quicker compensation and one day hopefully alleviate innocent people being put behind bars. Thank you for being here. God bless you.
Senator Mitchell?
Yeah, I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Senator Jackson. Apologies.
So it's sort of appalling to me that it takes so long. When you've been found innocent, you've already had a proceeding that has established and vindicated you. The fact that it would take so long, and I want to say 5 years, because you and your counsel are forced to go through hoops, and I recognize we all kind of have a knee-jerk reaction when lawyers take a fee. But my suspicion is that everything but the kitchen sink was thrown at you and at them. At the end of the day, you prevailed and had to hire counsel. And, you know, unless it's the Innocence Project or some group, that's how they make their living as well. And I'm sure that my colleagues who are strong supporters of the capitalist process would support the fact that people shouldn't be forced to work for free. That being said, there's no excuse for having to go through 5 years and having your lawyers obviously ultimately successful, but have to go through the kinds of obstacles that I'm sure were, and procedural obstacles put in your way and their way every step of the way. So I don't know whether it was the Victims' Compensation Board that was is the problem, is the impediment, but you know, you've already had your day. You've been vindicated, and now it's time for you to get your compensation. And so I want to also thank the good senator from San Diego for bringing this bill, and just urge that as we go forward, when that justice has been finally declared, it's time to give you your compensation and not put people through years of this kind of additional agony. You've already had more than your share. So perhaps that's the next step, that we look at what are these impediments? Are they just thrown out there just as a knee-jerk reaction to make you really suffer even more than you already have? Or is there any kind of justification? And as I sit here as a lawyer and someone who's worked to try to open up the Victims' Compensation Board in the past, and as someone who has some familiarity with the criminal justice system by virtue of my law practice, I can't find any good reasons. So I thank you for bearing with us, and thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill.
Senator Anderson, thank you very much for this joint effort. I'm a joint author with you, and I hope that we can even go further in future legislation. But I think that what you're bringing before us today is very important, and very much appreciate it. You may close.
Madam Chair, I was saving the best to last, and I was going to use your joint authorship as part of the close and the hammer to get the votes. But, you know, I think this is one of those bills, though, that when you hear the story, you know the difference between right and wrong. And I would be happy to open and add co-authors if any member would like to be a co-author who isn't a co-author. I think this is one of those bills that we should be united, and that everyone should see that we stand for justice. You know, sadly, I've run several bills, and I've had a great relationship with the Innocence Project, and they've really opened my eyes to the injustice in the world as we see it. And I met a woman who had been convicted for 10 years. She'd gone away when her daughter was 8 years old, and now she was a woman, and she was innocent, and yet that daughter was told that she had killed her husband, killed her father. And for 10 years, she had to endure that. So you can imagine what that relationship's like, trying to rebuild it. We had a fellow that spent over 3 decades for a crime he hadn't committed. How do you tell somebody that when you've robbed them of their family, when you've robbed them of the opportunity of having a family, how do we make those types of people whole again? We can't possibly. But to turn around and to delay what we know we owe them is absolutely outrageous. And so I'd just like to say compensation delayed for these innocent people is justice denied. And I urge an aye vote. And if any member would like to be a co-author, please let me know. I'd love to add you to it.
Please add me.
Senator Stone, absolutely be happy to.
Any other members can add, and because this motion is due pass to appropriations, so as amended, sorry, due pass as amended to appropriations, so other amendments can be added. All right, we'll have roll call.
Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Bradford? Bradford, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Wiener?
We'll hold the roll open for Senator Wiener. Thanks very much for bringing this, and thank all of you for testifying. We appreciate it. Okay. All right. We will now go to Senator Gaines. And our item 11, SB 1219, is what we'll start with.